Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, PattSun, and today we're going to be taking a look at r/surviving infidelity, where OP is having a difficult time moving on. Let's begin. It's been 15 years today. I'm still not healed. Posted by Reddit user Remarkable Pack.
Was cheated on when I was 18 years old, nearly beaten to death by her affair partner, and a handful of his friends. I survived, got my revenge, and focused on living a good life thinking I healed. I was so wrong. Met my now girlfriend of 13 years on my 21st birthday. She loved the calm, strong, collected, and confident man that she saw. I kept the anger, hatred, and frustration all in. We've managed to live a pretty good life over the years, traveling and living in different countries. I started reading stories here recently and saw so many people hurting just as badly as I was, some worse. I saw my pain in their words and thought I could say a few encouraging, sometimes harsh words and help them and maybe learn a few things myself. Every story where the betrayed left the wayward and went on to live a better life filled my heart with so much joy that I'd yell out, yeah. And then there were the stories where they took their wayward back. I thought I could let it go and wish them the best but couldn't. There was that rage, anger, and frustration again. You worthless, spineless piece of shit. I caught myself saying that loudly and collapsed onto the ground sobbing. She hadn't seen me like this before. So upon her request, I told her everything that happened before we met. We talked for hours until we dozed off on the couch. We talked some more and she asked if I'd want to go to see a therapist. I just looked at her cause I couldn't answer. I nodded and she called a friend's mother who booked an appointment last Friday. I've attended 3 sessions and I'm starting to learn how to process these feelings. She's joined me on a few sessions. I just don't know what this is going to lead to, but I am now hopeful. Showed her a pic of my ex and she smiled, looked at me and said, "Wow, you leveled up." She knows exactly what to say to make me laugh. But she's right, I leveled up big time. I want to be better for myself, her, and our family. Reddit helped me realize I haven't fully healed. I don't want to be that hate-filled person anymore. Maybe the ones who have been through this journey would share their wisdom. I'll take all the help I can get. Advice. Sorry for my language. Not really used to telling people about my past.
OP, it's so regrettable that you carried this around for so long. Sometimes we just can't process what our brains won't allow us full access to. Sometimes we just push them down, our emotions, we lock them away by our own volition. That's a bad thing to do in the long run, as you can very well guess by now. You were patching that dam for a long time. It was inevitable that it was going to collapse. Your wife sounds like an amazing person, and you have so much to be grateful for. I'm sorry that it happened to you, but at the same time, I'm very happy for you, OP, and I believe that you are starting to actually process what happened to you. You're going to move forward from this, and once you do, you will feel like a new man. Good luck. Our next story is from r/relationship advice. I still love my partner of 4+ years, and overall we have a healthy relationship, but I'm so exhausted and I don't think I can stay with her anymore. OP, if you're feeling so exhausted that you want to break up with her, newsflash, that's not a healthy relationship. Posted by Reddit user Nick Climb Stuff.
TLDR. My partner of 4+ years has severe anxiety and depression that have steadily worsened since we moved to a new city 1.5 years ago. And I am so exhausted I don't know that I can stay in a relationship with her, even though I still love her. It comes down to 3 things. 1. Over time, I have become a primary caretaker for her struggles with her mental health. 2. We moved to a new city and that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. 3. All the work that we've put into our relationship doesn't seem to be working. I don't know for sure if I want out of the relationship, and we're going to try couples counseling first. But if I do decide to end things, I'm looking for advice about breaking up with someone with severe anxiety. Sorry this is going to be so long. A lot of it will probably be boring to read. I just needed to write down how I'm feeling. But I'd appreciate it if those of you with experience dating people with anxiety and depression could give me some advice. I have been dating my girlfriend for over 4 years, and I love her. But things are not going very well for us, and it's really taking a toll on me. I'm not sure what to do and whether I should begin ending the relationship. We started dating pretty quickly after I broke up with my last girlfriend. She knew she wanted to date me and pursued me hard, and we eventually started dating. We got along very well and had lots of things in common, spent lots of time outside together, and had a great group of friends. I was working a relatively easy job while I applied to medical school, and she was finishing grad school nearby. We had 100% fallen in love over 2+ years and frequently talked about our long-term future together. We got even closer during COVID, essentially living together despite not actually having a place together, and decided that when I got into medical school. A typical med school applicant applies to 20 to 30 schools and gets into one or two, so often you are forced to move across the country. She would move with me and start her first real job while I started my first year. We also got a dog and trained him prior to leaving, so she would have a companion while I was studying and working a lot. This is important for later, but I emphasized before we got the dog that there would be many days, even most days, where she would have to be the primary caretaker for him, as I would be having many long nights studying and working. If she couldn't take care of him 100% on her own most days, we wouldn't get him. Of course, we settled it and got him, and I was very happy about it. Best dog ever. For several months before we moved, my girlfriend had been showing signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety, and made the effort to see a therapist to talk about some of her family issues and past trauma, and was eventually diagnosed and started on an SSRI. Around the same time, she switched contraceptives, which tanked her sex drive. Obviously, neither of these things were a big deal, since she was working through some things and taking active steps to make things better. We moved in the summer of 2021 from the very beautiful place we loved to a very large city. No more hiking, no more rock climbing, no more skiing, not even a hill to walk up within a 30-minute drive. We moved into a basement apartment with no natural light a week before I started school, and she started her job. We didn't like the city, but we stayed positive and vowed to try to make the best of the new city. Though we went on semi-regular dates, exploited the free concerts and festivals that popped up, things were obviously very different, and we weren't spending as much quality time together, mostly because of my school. She also didn't love the job she had taken. She worked at a special needs school as a specialized therapist, but she felt like she was being used as a punching bag and a babysitter. This really didn't change over the course of the year, but she got more used to it. She knew she would change jobs at the end of the year, which is also important later. We formed a small group of friends, mostly other medical students and their partners. The problem, though, was that whenever I was busy studying, our friends were also busy studying. She started to feel lonelier and didn't really know how to entertain herself in a new city, so she relied on our dog more and more to keep her company. This is where it starts to really tank. I encouraged her to fly home to our old city and stay with friends for a weekend in November 2021. She was having a great time with her friends, and I hoped it would be rejuvenating for her. I was out with friends for the afternoon. I arrived home to find that our dog got into the trash and had suffocated in the 2 hours that I was gone. A piece of me died that day. It was awful. I sat and wailed and called my friends, who stayed with me for the rest of the night. And what made it so much worse was having to call my girlfriend, while she was having a wonderful getaway weekend with her friends, to tell her that our boy was gone. We went into a really dark place for a few months. We both cried every night. She had panic attacks several times a day that I would talk her through and try to calm her down. About a week after he died, she flew home to her family to have more support while I stayed home alone. I encouraged her to go since I still had to study. Med school is heartless, and I would see her a week later for Thanksgiving anyways. She really needed someone there 24/7. But this also meant I was left alone for a week trying to stay on top of my emotions and school. I portrayed myself as strong, but I felt slightly abandoned. During our Thanksgiving break, we spent a lot of time together crying, but telling each other how strong we were and how much stronger we were together. She was still having regular panic attacks, but I knew we were going to make it through this. We returned to our apartment as the darkest and coldest part of the winter started. We'd go to work and school in the dark and return home in the dark. I tried to get all of my studying done early so that I could be there for her when she got home. But med school is so difficult and requires a lot of extracurricular commitments to be competitive for certain residents that there were many days that she would come home and be all alone for several hours. No more summertime concerts, no more fall colors, and often it was too cold to go outside for very long and enjoy it. She tried reading more, watching TV, cooking fancy meals, and keeping in touch with her family and friends back home, but these few months really started to worsen her anxiety, depression, and loneliness. We no longer had sex or much intimate contact, except for occasionally cuddling before bed, and spent most of our quality time together reassuring ourselves that this phase was only temporary, and we would make it out just fine. I could start to feel myself becoming more of a caretaker than a partner. I was handling our dog's death much better than her, especially after seeing my school's independent counselor a few times to talk it over. But with her, I was still constantly talking her down, and she still couldn't go very long without crying. I brought up that I wanted to be there for her, but she needed to see someone else as well, and so she began seeing another therapist in our new city. Her therapist is great, and my girlfriend still sees her weekly. But her conditions did not improve, and the rest of my first year of medical school was incredibly draining. The only things we could talk about were how strong we were. She was still very much in the early stages of grief, or what I could do to help her, which I was happy to do. I held her for hours most nights and tried to distract her by talking about other things, or by putting on a movie. We occasionally distracted ourselves by talking about the vacation we were hoping to take in the summer, and about the prospect of getting a new puppy. We did decide to get another puppy, who is freaking adorable, and things started to get a little bit better. We had a project to work on together in training our new dog, and that was very exciting. But she was still working her job. So, while she was gone for 7 to 8 hours of the day, it became my responsibility to take care of the puppy. It was clearly a different circumstance from getting our first dog, but I still had to organize my school days around being home with the dog. I didn't see my friends as much. I didn't have as much time to study. And I still wanted to spend time with my girlfriend when she got home. I was starting to feel exhausted. We are at the end of my first year of medical school, and on top of everything else, I had planned a 3-week trip to Europe for us to rejuvenate ourselves and spend some much-needed quality time together. We even found an affordable dog boarding and training place who could work with the dog while we were gone. Furthermore, I spent 6 weeks meticulously following Zillow to find a better apartment that was affordable, near school, had natural light, and a backyard for the dog. Eventually, I found the perfect place and thought it would solve a lot of our problems. We had a great time in Europe this past summer, and I certainly felt rejuvenated, but naturally my girlfriend's trip was often miserable. She developed a nasty hand rash 4 days into our trip in Barcelona that didn't resolve until after we got home. Doxycycline-induced photosensitivity, for anyone curious. So she was constantly in pain and couldn't really be in the sunlight. In London she got COVID, but tested negative daily for so long she was actually finished with quarantine before she got the positive result, and got a nasty sinus infection post-COVID. She was a trooper and was able to make it to a lot of the activities I had planned, but I was delicately balancing caring for her with trying to see the sights on our bucket list. Obviously none of that was her fault, but the vacation was far less of an escape for us than we wanted. When we got home, she was almost worse off than before. When we got back to our city in July, she started her new job. She had been talking to her therapist about being more independent when making big decisions with her life, since she felt like she often followed others' advice too much. For example, she did the same undergrad and master's degrees as her sister, and didn't explore other majors in college at all. So I tried to stay out of her decision-making process, and she settled on a company that would require her to commute over an hour each way in city traffic. I knew she hated driving and was setting herself up for 10-hour days, 5 days a week, which I also knew wouldn't be good for her, but she was adamant that it was what she wanted to do. In the 3 months she worked for this company, her anxiety and depression somehow got even worse than it already was. She would leave at 7 a.m., and I wouldn't see her until 7 to 8 p.m. sometimes. There was a week in September where she got so sick, I have to believe it was the flu, that her stress and anxiety levels exacerbated dramatically, that she didn't work for 7 days, which was all of her PTO for the entire year. I remained supportive of her, but took on an even greater caretaker role. I was in my second year of med school, notoriously one of the hardest years, taking care of the dog full-time, cooking all of our meals, trying my best to keep the apartment clean, and trying to stay sane. I get like I was taking care of 2 people, a dog, acting as a therapist and a chef, all while trying to study medicine. It seemed like the only things we talked about were her mental health and the puppy. We started bickering a lot more over silly things. I could tell that I was getting burned out. I was honest with her about my concerns, and she started making a plan to leave the company about 6 weeks after she started. She reached out to a few local clinics to work at, but nothing worked out. It didn't matter, because she got sick again in October and the company fired her, very unfairly and out of the blue, for excessive absences. I was relieved she was finished with the job, but she had no plan to keep working yet. In the end, she decided she would take some time off to train our dog as a service animal to respond to panic attacks. I was supportive of this since it meant she would get a break from working and hopefully have enough strength to carry on with her life more independently. She came up with a plan. She spent the month before Thanksgiving working on training our dog as a service animal to respond to her panic attacks, which she has done an excellent job with. It makes me happy to see her with our dog all the time, and I know the dog is reducing some of her daily anxiety. Honestly, I have tried to lightly bring up that she would be a fabulous professional dog trainer. Then, we would fly home to her parents' house on the West Coast for Thanksgiving. When I would fly back to finish my semester, she and her dad would drive the new car he bought for her to the town we used to live in, and she would couch surf for the next few weeks until I flew out to meet her there and we would have Christmas with my family. She does have a few job shadowing opportunities lined up while she is there, but obviously they won't lead to a new job for her since they are 15 miles away. I am getting increasingly worried that getting a new job is not a high priority for her. So, I'm back in the apartment alone again after another bad experience, while she is seeing family and friends. It feels like we're repeating history, only this time I don't feel as optimistic about our relationship when we finally go back to reality in January. My girlfriend's struggles are as bad as they've ever been, and as much as I try to set boundaries about being a caretaker, I inevitably remain one. I can feel the pressure with school getting harder, and my grades have started slipping the past few exams. I know that school is only going to get harder and take up more of my time, as well. I guess it comes down to this. I respect her for trying to overcome some of her problems on her own. I admire that she is regularly seeing a therapist, and has proactively been prescribed medications to help. But it seems like things have only gotten worse. I admire that she's looking for new jobs to alleviate some of my stress, but I feel like she could have been trying to look for opportunities while training our dog as a service animal. Now, she's going to end up taking at least 2 months off work, and she still doesn't have a plan once she returns. I recognize that we have gone through a lot of trauma together, and people take different amounts of time to grieve, but I remain her primary caretaker. We still have our group of friends, but she still doesn't have anyone else to hang out with when I and all of our friends are studying. On another note, she switched contraceptives again recently, but we have still only had sex probably 5 or 6 times since we moved, and not at all since she switched. She talks to her therapist about it often, and comes home with new ideas to revitalize our physical affection for each other, but I always end up being the one initiating. I think that the life that we are living together is unsustainable for me in the long term, especially knowing that the roots of our problems, living in a city that we don't like, her being lonely, and her mental health struggles will clearly not be changing anytime soon. I know that breaking up with her would be devastating to her, and it would set her down a path of misery and pain. I would worry about her harming herself if I were to leave. I still love her and I know it would be very difficult and lonely for me as well. But I don't see any other way out without something magically changing. I wish it were easier to love the person I have loved for 4 years. The next step that we have talked about together is couples counseling, but I feel less hopeful every day. Does anyone have any advice? And if breaking up is clearly the only option, how do I make it as gentle as possible for her? Thanks.
See? I was right, OP. This is not a healthy relationship. It sounds like the two of you had become incredibly codependent, with you being the caretaker and her being the one allowed to fall apart and depend on you to handle all of her emotions. She needs to find a healthy way to manage her own anxiety and stress. The trauma of your dog dying is awful. It's real. And in my opinion, it's just as painful as losing a human. And you both definitely have a right to grieve that loss. However, it seems like more of her problems are related to her own bad decisions, like taking that job that obviously was going to be a poor fit. But her main bad choice, her main bad decision, OP, was following you. And while it's not exactly your fault that she moved to be with you, it's what you both wanted. It was an awful choice from the very beginning if she actually wanted to do anything with her own life. This setup is often a recipe for social and financial disaster for the trailing spouse. Now, I am not an expert or a professional in this subject. So what I will do, I will put some resources in the description box down below so you can check them out later or you can read about them after this video. But from what I can understand, OP, what you are experiencing is the trailing spouse syndrome play out in real life. She feels useless, isolated, hates the location, can't or won't find her own social life, becomes completely dependent on you for emotional and mental health needs, even though you hardly have time for her, takes a whatever job while you get to be the one who is pursuing your real goals. All the while feeling somewhat of a martyr since she did this for you. She moved for you. And you're correct that none of this is going to change for a long time. After med school, you will still have your residency, which will mean moving to another location you have little choice over, working 18, 20, maybe even 24-hour shifts and never get to see each other, still living in a shitty apartment because you're under a mountain of debt and still barely make a living wage. Sure, your life may improve in 10, 15 years or something, once you get settled at a comfy practice in the city of your choice, and your girlfriend can just stay at home with a dog in a big house and a yard. But until then, OP, this is your reality. You are with someone who is incapable of managing their own life and function independently. As for right now, you do not have the time, energy, and mental fortitude to continue helping her if you want to succeed in medical school. OP, it's okay to admit to yourself that this relationship is draining you dry and you don't have the resources to sustain it forever. I'm not saying that this will not work out. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that the two of you need some therapy, particularly her, about her stress, anxiety, and codependence. And then get some couples counseling. Move on from there. Good luck. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my YouTube channel for you to watch absolutely free. So consider clicking that super thanks just below the video title, or you can use my PayPal in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, make sure to subscribe to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.